breaking news right now, and this is from Darren Dreger. This is the verified account, not what we were hoping to hear, Murat. From Dregs, sources say Barry Trotz has decided not to immediately jump back into coaching. Trotz informed the Winnipeg Jets of his decision today and intends on continuing to focus on his family. Trotz acknowledged how difficult the decision was not to accept the head coaching job in Winnipeg. Dregs goes on to say, Trotz is taking time to do what he needs to do personally, but doesn't rule out returning to coach down the road. He was deeply appreciative of Winnipeg Jets owner Mark Chipman, GM Kevin Cheveldayoff, and all involved in this process and their commitment to winning. The Winnipeg Jets will advance in their hiring process and will immediately begin scheduling second interviews while expanding their candidates list as well. There you go, live on the air. We're getting the news, Barry Trotz not coming to Winnipeg. That'll be a big disappointment to many Jet fans. Certainly a disappointment to us. It would have been, we talked so much why this would have been a fit made in heaven. We knew there was far from any guarantees. And if this does turn out to be the case, where do the Winnipeg Jets go from here, Murat? Wow.
Well, I mean, that's big news and tough news for Winnipeg Jets fans, to be sure. And like I said earlier, I mean, as recently as yesterday, I heard a continued sense of optimism. So I believe what Dreger reports that, Trotz's decision would have been very, very difficult. I also think that, myself and I'm sure others as well have written to the effect that, as the coaching carousel has filled up, it seems as though it's more about Trotz versus himself and his own decisions and his own needs, as opposed to the Winnipeg Jets or not. And I think I've written a couple of times on that front as well. Now, where do they go? And, you asked this question earlier when it was just a hypothetical before this breaking news. I know Jets fans will be disappointed, but like I said, I continue to believe that there are quality candidates out there beyond the number one guy with respect to Barry Trotz. And Jim Montgomery is a name that I've heard as a valid second option a couple of times from a couple of places. That's a situation where when you talk about second interviews or expanding the list, I think that that's the most veteran, most established, most on his way up and celebrated coach that I believe to be on the Jets short list at this point. So that's one name that I would keep my eyes on. Like I say, I continue to believe Scott Arniel would play a substantial role on the coaching staff next year. It continued to be my belief as recently as earlier this week that associate coach role that I wrote about earlier is still there for him. So that continues to be an option, but this is a major pivot, and good on Barry Trotz for doing it today to give Winnipeg, next week, like we talk about the timeline, to really sort itself out in advance of that draft.
What are we going to do with all this beer? Guess we're going to have to drink it. We'll start working on that after the show.
I'm going to give you a Crescentwood address, Murat, just in a second. Okay, I'll text that to you in a second here, Huss.
We're going to start making some deliveries in and around here. Murat, listen, this is not, and we're just finding this out basically live as we're doing the show, and I'm sure there'll be more developments going forward. You do make a good point, though. To drag this out, if it's not going to happen, it does give the Winnipeg Jets an opportunity to then make the pivot. And I know they've been planned for this, knowing that this was an absolute possibility. Here's one name. And listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I know a lot. I didn't pay a ton of attention to his team this year. But could there be a better story going forward if it's not Trotz than Andrew Brunette coming to coach the Winnipeg Jets, with Paul Maurice now taking his spot in South Florida with the Panthers?
It's funny. I've heard some distant, 3 times through the telephone wire speculation about Andrew Brunette in Winnipeg as well. I don't know if there's anything to that whatsoever, but can you imagine? There's so many reasons. Not only having himself bumped essentially by Paul Maurice to get out of Florida, which, is a substantial move. I'm sure that Brunette is fuming about missing out on the opportunity to coach there again next season. But also think about all the nerds out there, all the analytics analysts who have been looking forever for a really scientific study of coaching impacts, just flip-flop 2 coaches from one team to another year over year. We've got the best study that there ever was in terms of what coaching can do to impact a team. And then from that sort of castaway phenomenon, that Vegas Golden Knights in 2018, where it was us against the world forever and ever. Well, could you imagine just the amount of motivation in Brunette right now to prove an awful lot of people wrong? I think that it would be such a fun place if Winnipeg happened to be that place for him.
I mean, the narratives write themselves going in, and there would be a real FU mentality, I'm sure, to Andrew Burnett wherever he gets his opportunity. But if it was to come to Winnipeg, and to your point, essentially a flip-flop from two coaches and two teams, it certainly would give us the best bit of data on swapping rosters with two coaches to see what's happening. I guess you've had no shortage of topics to get at your pieces for The Athletic these days, and that's not changing anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we've got the mailbag going up right now, and I'm sure that the number of questions in it just doubled over the last 5 minutes since Dreger's report. I mean, this is big, so we'll pursue the rest of the Jets coaching search as well, of course. Got a couple of feature stories in the works that, I hope I can deliver on in a way that is satisfying in the end. So I won't tease too much of those necessarily. I do have, in advance of the draft, I have a story that I'm really excited about some of the more impressive picks in Jets draft history as well. And so there'll be some coverage on that. But this is a get your popcorn, tumultuous, seismic offseason for the Winnipeg Jets. And yeah, you're absolutely right. There's no shortage of topics. We'll be writing an awful lot about it at The Athletic.
Coach, captain, star player with unrestricted free agency. Yeah, I mean, listen, I know this is a smaller market and not one of the bigger name teams, but there is not a more interesting spot in the National Hockey League right now for the offseason than right here with the Winnipeg Jets. And listen, it gives us a lot to talk about, and it certainly gives you a lot to write about. And I do have a feeling like these next couple of weeks, and then, of course, the couple months following, will be the most pivotal we've seen since this team came back to Atlanta. And it sounds like the job and the work of Kevin Cheveldayoff got a little bit more challenging over the course of the past 20 minutes.
Can I just throw one thing out there as well? Because this is going to feel like dark days for Jets fans. This is going to feel like, first of all, Barry Trotz was supposed to be the roster is in a tumultuous situation, but we're going to get the number one guy. That was supposed to be what made Jets fans happy right now. And I think that because of the potential for moves and big names and all of that sort of stuff, there could be some darker moments in Jets fandom in the coming weeks as well. But if we zoom out a little bit, if you're looking for that redemption story a year, 2 years, or whatever in the future, maybe even sooner than that, I mean, this is still a team with good people in good positions, whether it's a Josh Morrissey, a Kyle Connor, a Nikolai Ehlers. As long as Connor Hellebuck is in net, a team has a chance to win games, and he looks like he's going to be in net for the next couple of seasons as well. If you're looking for turnaround stories that started in awful places, you look for quality pieces in important situations, and Winnipeg does have a few of those that I just like to remind everybody about at this time when sort of everything's on fire and it looks like things could get awfully dark in the next little while.
Considered when we get to the draft, because I think honestly everything is pretty much on the table, minus a couple of players that I couldn't imagine wrapping my head around the team moving on from. Do you think that if it's not Barry Trotz, and you would think that the immediate possibility of a turnaround might be lessened, that this might have a significant impact on the direction of the decisions that Kevin Cheveldayoff makes? I mean, we've talked a lot about the draft. The Jets have the 2 picks right now. We have heard scuttlebutt that maybe this is a point that, they actually do begin to go younger, almost similar to what happened after 2015.
That's a great point, a great question. I think that there's the one step in the middle is those secondary coaching options. And, if it's a first-time NHL head coach, then you might look for that younger direction or that movement, because the theory is they'll grow together as a group. But if they're still in, as I don't have this today, but like a few days ago, still believe Jim Montgomery to be a viable second option, like I say, if they're still looking at a coach who is on the way up, who has coached an NHL team, whose systems have been described as quite modern and all of those sorts of things, there's still room to believe that the roster quality that Winnipeg had last year was playoff quality under the right coaching. I still believe that. If they can't hit on those second options on that next group, that next circled list, then you do have to think about that, I think. And Winnipeg having 2 first-round picks, having an option to grab that second-round pick this year from St. Louis, there are ways to transition towards a younger roster. There certainly are. And then you would see, with a little bit more certainty, players like Blake Wheeler and otherwise perhaps on the way out, because I just can't imagine, in addition to everything that's gone on, a retool or a rebuild to be incredibly palatable for them. It would really be about the next generation, the Kyle Connors, the Nick Ehlers, and so on and so forth.